Ugh. Let's do it again. Why not? Groundhog Day up in this biatch. 2790. 2790. 2790. You might not like me. That's fine. I get it. I get that you watch things that you don't like. It's kind of weird, but whatever. I don't like me half the time either. If you don't want to take my word for it with respect to impending catastrophe in the entropic state of things, then just take the most sought-after commodity in human history's word for it. It's telling you that the shit is hitting the fan. Hello? The Dow is double what it was in 2020. You think that's normal? Do the tent cities reflect that? That's called a market melt-up. You think that's going to continue with the next president? If it does, it's not going to mean a damn thing. It's just going to mean more tent cities because it's hyperinflationary market melt-up. Now listen, guys. Gold doesn't lie, and I'm going to tell you why the price of gold is going up. You see, anytime an F-35 misses its target, gold is going to go up. Anytime an F-35 sneezes, gold catches a cold. I don't know if that metaphor makes sense. I'm going to have to meditate on it and I'll get back to you. But when an F-35 misses its target, the faith in the global reserve currency goes right into the pisser. And it appears as though that's what's happened because we're still waiting on the satellite imagery of the completely destroyed Iranian missile defense systems that Israel, who has very capable access to very capable satellite technology, you think that they would provide that and remove all doubt because they could simply show us the satellite footage. Here's the before, here's after. We clearly knew where these things were. We destroyed the S-300. Understand that this was the most important event, even more important than anything that has happened in the Ukraine war, because it pitted the best of the West up against what arguably is the best of the East, although it's not the S-550, the S-500, the S-400, but you had a combination of capabilities, Chinese, Russian, Iranian, that this F-35 platform was tested against. And it appears as though it failed, because we don't have any satellite confirmation that it happened. Yet, here we go. We know exactly where the THAAD system is, the world's most advanced radar and air defense system, currently dead center in Israel, in and around the Nevatim Air Base. We know where that is. We have satellite confirmation, right? It's blurry, but we know it's there. So how come we don't have that footage? Well, anytime an F-35 misses its target, baby, gold reflects that because it's bad for the dollar. Gold is measured in the dollar. Look, people are excited because they have gold. This means nothing. Okay, all it means is that shit's hitting the fan. Because back in 2010, when gold was, I don't know, like $1,200 or something, I could buy with that $1,200. That 1 ounce of gold would get me the exact same thing that it would get me now at $2,800. That's all it means. This is the resting place of inflation. It's telling you that society is collapsing. Now, the Russians decided to do some nuclear tests today. Run-of-the-mill ICBM, SLBM tests. However, the way it was packaged was much different than before. I just bit my tongue. Packaged. Putin launches a nuclear exercise, RT frames it, and RIA Novosti and TASS. Why is this important? Why is the packaging important? Typically, the Russian Ministry of Defense will come out and say, we did a routine annual exercise of the strategic forces. This was a planned event and blah, 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 blah. This time, Putin came out guns blazing with a forthright veiled threat to NATO that they are preparing for new external threats. Here's the exact quote. Given the growth of geopolitical tensions as well as the emergence of new external threats and risks, it is important to have modern strategic forces that are constantly ready for combat use. Constantly ready for combat noose. I must repeat this, and it bears repeating every single day. There's no nuclear treaties. The Russians revised their nuclear doctrine. There's no Russian ambassador inside Washington, and the United States is not being notified of the whereabouts of Russia's mobile ICBM platforms if those treaties are no longer being honored. There certainly is no mutual inspections taking place. So we are in a whole new realm of shit. And the reason why Russia is doing this is pretty clear. A couple days ago, well, yesterday, I guess, the Pentagon said that there are no new limits on Ukraine's use of U.S. arms if North Korea joins Russia's fight. So, initially, Russia denied that North Koreans were fighting in Ukraine. And Vladimir Putin didn't deny it the other day. And of course, you know, the Russians are going to lie just like the West lies. It's just our lies tend to be, at least in the last 3 years, much bigger, okay? Much bigger and more consequential. In Russia, they tend to lie also. So, you know, sorry to the Russia bros, but it's true. There likely are. Where there's smoke, there's fire. There's definitely North Koreans inside the Kursk region, probably trying to get some level of training. And that's a bad sign because that means that they do expect there will eventually be a war with South Korea. Perhaps they're even relaying some of that information to the Chinese. Now, it also means that if the United States permits no limits on the weaponry that they've provided Ukraine, the long-range ATACMS, okay, the F-16 platform, which is a nuclear-capable platform, it's saying a lot. And this is why this annual routine exercise was framed in the way it was, bringing us to a new level of brinkmanship. We should call this nuclear edging. You know, we've just been constantly nuclear edging. It's like a, what's the reverse of an orgasm? Like the opposite of an orgasm. Like what would that be? I don't know. Look for the antonym. Somebody Google antonym of orgasm. And whatever that is, that's what's going on right now. Okay, we're straddling that line. It appears into perpetuity. But eventually, day X has to come. You see what I did there? All right, you know, you gotta have some gallows humor at times like this. This is an SLBM test. Yeah, that's it. It works. They work. They've worked for 70 years. They're still working. This is what's happening in Ukraine. The Russians are kicking some ass, 500 square kilometers in 1 month, the biggest gain since the start of the war. It is not looking good. Now, you might be asking yourself, okay, the Russians are winning now. We don't have to worry about nuclear war because the Russians are winning, right? And, you know, for people with brains, that line of thinking makes sense because if Russia's not concerned that it's being backed into a corner by NATO and it's going to be strategically defeated, then the nuclear risk is actually much lower. So why then is Vladimir Putin calling this nuclear drill, or why is the Russian media framing it as such, and why are we reaching this level of brinkmanship as Russia actually has the most success they've seen since the start of the war? Well, it's clear that this signifies that NATO is not willing to allow Russia to win. And this is something that I used to talk about a lot, but it does relate to gold. Because if the U.S., when that F-35 misses, or that F-16, okay, as soon as the U.S. ceases to be the global military power and the degree to which it recedes in its military superpower status is the degree to which gold goes higher because there's less faith in the U.S. currency. A simple way to understand it, as I always used to say, is that the biggest military guards the vault, right? And so if you have the world's biggest military, you guard the vault, everybody's going to invest in your economy. And that is why invest in your economy, invest in your treasuries, so you can keep printing money. And this is why the U.S. stock market has continuously went up in these calamitous times, because it's still the safest it's the dirtiest, or it's the cleanest shirt in the dirty laundry basket, in a laundry basket that overall gets dirtier and dirtier. But it's almost like, let's just say there was an economic downturn, and all of the small fish eventually, the bigger corporations can weather the storm, but the small ones can't. So everybody invests their money into the big corporations. So bad news is actually good for the US dollar to a point, right? To a point. Clearly, we can see that gold is reflecting uncertainty about the future of US hegemony. Because if you allow Russia to establish a foothold and exploit these annexed territories, that is going to make them more powerful and you less powerful, expanding their sphere of influence, economic and otherwise, and contracting your own. So that is why they're investing billions and billions of dollars in this conflict, and it's going to be trillions because the US dollar depends on it. The US hegemony depends, and they will throw as many bodies, they'll pull as many Ukrainians off the street as they have to, just like this poor sap right here. Okay, the Ukrainians are now going to be recruiting another 160,000. This is what recruitment looks like in a Western democracy. If you think that the last 5 years have been a joke, just wait till Uncle Sam starts recruiting, okay, to go fight on Israel's behalf. Look at this guy. He looks like he missed leg, arm, and body day. Yeah, those guys are eating well, but the guys on the front lines, unfortunately, and I'm not trying to make fun of this. I'm trying to call attention to it in a way that is going to get attention, because this is absolutely unjust. The Ukrainian people are getting fucked over by NATO because they're not being given really what they need in order to succeed, and it appears as though they're just being leveraged as this bulwark, as this expendable human resource to throw bodies at Russia until NATO can work its shit out, eventually put troops into Ukraine, which is coming because they've threatened to do that now in response to North Korean troops coming in, and, day X comes. That's basically what we're waiting for at this point in time. I've said earlier in the year that I thought that when the F-16s arrived, that was going to be a major red line. And indeed, after the F-16s arrived, immediately after that, Russia, well, not immediately, but within weeks of that happening, the Russians altered their nuclear doctrine, and the nuclear rhetoric approached a fever pitch. And we've seen all of that, craziness about allowing long-range weapon strikes into Moscow, which just a year ago would have seemed unthinkable. Eventually, they got a little quiet about that because they realized, well, it's probably better, and Lloyd Austin came out and said, it's probably better than if we allow Ukraine and their 4 million drones that they allegedly produce a year. I mean, where are they producing these drones? I mean, let's get real. I mean, where is Ukraine producing 4 million drones a year? Okay, anyways, that's what they're saying. Let Ukraine use its own long-range bomber drones to attack inside Russia, and we'll just fund it all. And then the Russians will, our hands will be clean of this and we won't be culpable. But of course, as Russia is winning, they're threatening nuclear war even more and more. So clearly something is going on. And of course, you still have the situation in Kursk that is yet to be resolved, where I presume that's where you're going to find the North Koreans, because it's in Russia, right? Or as Ukraine would say right now, Ukraine. So yeah, it's a tangled web we weave. With respect to this nuclear missile test, this is old tech, This is just tried and true tech. They're on currently a high state of readiness, the highest state of readiness. I mean, the shit could hit the fan any day now. I just cracked a joke on another social media platform. You can write this down. You can put it on a t-shirt. Freud was right. World War III will happen. Nuclear war will happen because old geezers want to get laid. That's something you think about after you take some psilocybin, or you're sipping a little whiskey at the end of the day. That's something you meditate on, okay? Freud was right. Nuclear war will happen because old geezers wanted to get laid and protect their own asses. That's the only reason why it's going to happen. Switzerland is no longer neutral. The Swiss Air Force and the U.S. Air Force in Europe are holding exercises October 28th to 30th, 2024 in Swiss airspace. I'm pretty sure that the Swiss have not organized something similar with the Russians, meaning that they're no longer neutral. They got lots of bunkers and lots of guns anyway, so if anyone's going to survive it, it's going to be them. Romania is also going to start shooting down Russian drones. A bill was tabled today, which is going to allow Romania to shoot down or take down Russian drones leveraging electronic warfare. Now, where this gets really gray is that if they choose to take down these drones inside Ukrainian territory in anticipation that these drones or missiles may attack Romania, that's where things get a little weird, and that's where the Russians might view this as a hostile act by NATO. I know it seems crazy. You're shooting down missiles that are about to target a place, but it is a war between Russia and Ukraine, and there's obviously unspoken and very clearly demarcated red lines. So the real thing is with the electronic warfare, because if Romania decides to help out a place like Odessa, which is close to Romania, then that might impact Russia's ability to fight against Ukraine, and Russia may have to attack Romania. Now, this is just a bill that is currently being tabled. It hasn't been approved yet, but it's something to keep an eye on. Thank God our leaders are cowards. Thank God our leaders are cowards, and they're smart enough to be cowards. Israel had a successful strike on 93 terrorists today. 93 terrorists in one blow, all able-bodied males of fighting age, but they were disguised, I think 25 of them were disguised as children, and the other 70 were disguised as like women and elderly. So that Hamas is getting very good at their disguises. Very good. Israel is, but you can't get anything past Israel. Nope. So yeah, it's the biggest ever amount of deaths in one strike ever. So that's where we're at, guys. If that would have happened in Ukraine, it would have been worldwide news, shocking. We need to invoke Article 5. This is, we got to send in troops and all this stuff. Putin just ain't playing that game. But I guess Israel has to do it. It's like, we had no choice to kill all the children, and, they had no choice. We're living in the end times. This is the end. Beautiful friends. Oh, yeah. So this is the fad. We know where this is. We don't know where the smoked Iranian radars are. This is Nevatim Air Base. Yeah. Maybe the Israelis will pull a Houdini and eventually they'll show us, on the satellite imagery where they attacked in Iran. There really is no reason not to show it. Like there's nothing that they would lose from a security point of view in showing us that they targeted those things. And people are just taking their word for it. It's like, why would you take their word for it? It makes no sense. Okay, in terms of what's going to happen before the election is going to be chaos. Okay, we all know that. The next 7 days are going to be chaos. Shit's about to go down with Iran and Israel again. All right? The nothing ever happens crowd is going to get very silent and back into a corner of the room, the darkest corner of the room once again. Brigadier General Nagdi, advisor to the Commander-in-Chief of the Revolutionary Guards, says we have a big surprise for Israel in the coming days. Now, part of me wonders, why on earth would you ever tell somebody that you were about to prank them? Like, that's really the equivalent of what this is. So they're telling them that there's going to be a surprise. I guess it's not a surprise anymore. They're saying that they're going to attack. Now, people are asking, why would Iran attack? And this is the question I ask. Why would Iran attack if Israel's attack was unsuccessful. All right, if it's been revealed that the emperor has no clothes. The reason is because Israel's intention was to take out all of Iran's missile defense. That is not something you can just let go, right? You have to respond to that because you know it's likely going to be followed up with another strike that could come at any moment. So even if they were unsuccessful, the intention was there to do some major damage. Now, maybe they underestimated Iranian capabilities and the attack was thwarted. There's a lot of unknowns here, okay? But they have to then assume that Israel is about to do some other crazy shit. Because if they weren't able to provoke Iran in this way, if they weren't able to get that knee-jerk reaction that they needed to bring the United States into the conflict, because Gallant yesterday said that we're running out of troops. They don't have enough troops to fight all these wars on these multiple fronts. They're kicking in doors in the West Bank. They're fighting 95 terrorists disguised as children in buildings in the Gaza Strip. They're in Lebanon, they're everywhere, right? So they need manpower. The only way they get that manpower is that the United States enters into the conflict, and they don't want to run the risk of it being left in the air with respect to which one of the candidates, even though both of the candidates are beholden to Israel. Recently, Kamala was asked by some member of the audience, what are you going to do for Gaza? And her response was, the first thing we're going to do is make sure we end this war and bring the hostages home. All right, and clearly this person was talking about well, what about humanitarian aid for 2 million people who are currently starving to death and eating cats? But so this is how you know it doesn't matter. They're both pandering to Israel. So Israel will win either way. And I'm not entirely sure why as to yet. There must be some really, really, powerful strings being played there. But essentially, Israel is now saying, the Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi, he is the Israel Chief of General Staff, is saying that if Iran makes the mistake of launching another missile barrage at Israel, we will once again know how to reach Iran with capabilities that we did not even use this time and strike very, very hard at both their capabilities and locations that we set aside for now. We did this for a simple reason, because we may be required to do it again. So he's basically telling you, look, if they're saying they may have to do it again, and Israel's saying that, they're going to not only do it again, they're going to do it 10 more times. This is just the beginning. Apparently, Israel has approved another response attack on Iran in response to a Hezbollah assassination attempt against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. So I don't know why they would attack Iran if Hezbollah attacked Netanyahu. Yes, I know that Hezbollah is deemed a proxy of Iran, but that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. And if you think that all this ceasefire talk, if you're still being taken in by that, this is what Yoav Gallant said today. He said, in response to the new Hezbollah leader being appointed, that temporary appointment, not for long, meaning that they're going to continue to ramp up the conflict. And this talk of ceasefire that we heard right before the Nasrallah assassination is just another diversion to get people to put their guards down so they can smoke them out of their holes and do the whole decapitation thing all again, even though it never works with a guerrilla fighting force because it's not a centralized, top-down regimented style of command as you would have in more, established militaries. Apparently there was a leak. Information on Israel's nuclear missile bases and secret headquarters was leaked. According to Haaretz, the identity and residence of hundreds of Israeli soldiers who work in spy bases and headquarters and even nuclear missile warehouses has been exposed. Well, this would explain why they've been moving, and according to that so-called Pentagon leak, they were moving their nuclear arsenal to different places on the map. Because they're saying that this was due to a security gap in a sports application on the phones of Israeli soldiers. But according to, if you remember the story we talked about last year, I believe it was, An Egyptian diplomat leaked information about how one of the main objectives of Operation Al-Aqsa Flood, which is Hamas's invasion of the Israeli military bases on October 7th, was to collect intelligence for Iran, for the mothership. And this intelligence pertained to locations of strategic forces, information about Israel's Unit 8200. Of course, they took many commanders of the Israeli military hostage, and many people forget about that. Like, you don't hear that talked about. You have to ask yourself, what sort of information did they get out of those Israeli commanders, you know? And why, and who knows, maybe Hannibal Doctrine was enacted to take them out. Maybe they were able to identify where those commanders were and take them out before they talked. Hey man, it's a crazy, crazy world. Now, for you guys who think I'm an Iranian bro, because you don't know what objectivity is if it slapped you in the face, here's the Israeli perspective. Now, the Israelis are saying they're pulling out of Lebanon, and they're getting ready for a ceasefire. Okay, remember Gallant 2 days ago says we don't have enough troops, and this is why they need the United States. And all of this happens right after, you know, this attack that I think they expected would elicit an immediate Iranian response, but it didn't because their attack failed. Anyways, so this is the shaded parts of the map here are where the Israeli forces have penetrated into southern Lebanon. Right now, the tally is, I believe it is 38 Merkava tanks just in southern Lebanon. I can't remember how many of these tanks got smoked in Gaza, but it was quite a few, and I think Israel had about 400 to 500 of them to start. So, you know, and we're talking about a month of a Lebanon invasion, and they barely got their foot in the door. Nonetheless, they've made some progress, right, in the border regions. But it's much easier to do that in the regions that are most proximate to your country, where you have good logistics. As soon as you venture in deeper here, that's when the real guerrilla warfare starts. I'm surprised Hezbollah is not booby-trapping more of these facilities that they're abandoning. Perhaps there's some kind of trap that's being set. But essentially, Israel is claiming, okay, this is what they're claiming. IDF-controlled territory in Lebanon after 4 weeks, is what you can see here. Most of the first line of villages along the border have been occupied. That's because they basically blow everything up with all the bombs that the U.S. sent them. With 20 years of Hezbollah fortifications and stockpiles captured and explosively demilitarized, the IDF has only lost 41 men. Hezbollah has lost over 1,500. Though as the empty bunkers full of go bags and valuable weapons testify, most of the fighters melted away, and reports of thousands fleeing to Syria with their families. Okay, I mean, it might be true. It might be true. We give Israel the benefit of the doubt, right? They did completely destroy Gaza and are in the process of genociding the population. That is true. That is true. Hundreds of thousands of people eating cats. Now, what was I going to say here? Oh, yeah, this is this here. What's this here? Oh, yeah, this here. Okay, so this is the opposition leader in Israel. Okay, this is a guy in Israel, right? The opposition. This is what he has to say. There was October 7th. People died, people in the tunnels of Gaza. 13 fighters were killed yesterday. He's talking about Israeli fighters. That's a lot of Israeli fighters for one day. And I don't think we're hearing about that in the news. This is the opposition leader. He's in Israel. He wouldn't be saying this if, you know, he didn't have some backing. 13 more will be killed tomorrow if this government does not do something. You can't pretend it didn't happen. You can't pretend that now. You can treat it as if, we go back here, you can treat it as if it all was 11,000 wounded and 890 killed. Now, some people would say the number is even higher than that. I'm not sure if that includes, that must include everyone who died on October 7th of the military. That's still a sizable amount for a country like Israel, right? Who has a smaller relative population. But it's still not that much compared to the losses on the other side. But When put in perspective, they are saying that the losses of Hamas is something 20,000 fighters or something like that. I can't remember the exact number. So it's a spread, but it's not like a huge spread considering it's playing on easy mode, right? Like they're literally shooting fish in a barrel with the most advanced weaponry in the world, full spectrum, ISR, 24/7. Nothing's coming into the country without them knowing about it. You could not have a more ideal conflict. I mean, what they should have done is said, hey, women, children, we're going to give you an option. We're going to build this refugee camp in the desert. And we're going to make sure people are very, well vetted and screened, and you have an option to come in here while we go in here and do it. They could have just did that, okay? But instead, they let it go to their heads. Let's see, it's the wounded, it's the dead. There's a limit on how much we will relate to alternative truths. These are facts. If you have doubts about this figure, go to Tel Ashar, go to Ichalov, go to Rabam, go to the rehabilitation department. So he's saying that the numbers in the hospitals will show you the truth about how many people have actually perished. And these numbers that he's getting, we can presume the numbers are much higher than the information he is even getting. Because, of course, Israel has a very tight control over the information that goes out there. And that's one of the benefits of having a small empire, is that you can control everything, right? And literally it can be a very totalitarian style society. You can control all the information. You can make sure that information about what's going on there doesn't get out. And Ukraine has been very good with this too, although they use far more draconian methods on their population. I'm not sure what the punishment is in Israel if you say, take a picture of a bomb that went off that Hezbollah, blew up in Tel Aviv or something like that. You see it, but you don't see a lot of it. Now, according to Fox News, Fox News, that reliable, infallible media source, they're claiming, see, how's our audio doing here? Okay, we're good. They spoke to Fox News. All of Iran's long-range air defense systems and most of its medium-range air defenses were made inoperable by Friday night's strike campaign, including 3 S-300s batteries acquired by from Russia in 2016. U.S. President Biden's envoy on Middle Eastern affairs, Amos Hochstein, confirmed their destruction. So Hochstein confirmed their destruction. So Hochstein, can you please get us the footage? We're waiting for the footage. All right, just get someone on Fiverr to doctor some images. Okay, just make it believable, please. Even if they took out all of these S-300 systems, the Iranians have their equivalent reverse-engineered system for which they have dozens. So this is just bullshit. The emperor has no clothes and we're fucked, and these old geezers are bringing us to the brink of nuclear war, and they know we don't have a valid defense. Put it this way. Look at our civil defense infrastructure. Do you think it's adequate? Of course it's inadequate. So just extrapolate that to everything else that they're telling us about their capabilities in the world. They're saying, our strategic forces are the dominant force on the planet, when we know that that's not true. When you look at every other authoritarian society who does provide subterranean hospice to their population, if nuclear war should happen, from the Moscow tunnels to the millions of, maybe not millions, but there's some massive underground cities inside China, North Korea, the missile cities of Iran. All of these populations provide safe space, well, with the exception of some, but for a significant portion of their population, or they're ready for it. So if they're lying to us about how ready we are to fight a nuclear war or how high the nuclear threat level is, why should we believe them that we have superiority over a near peer who has the backing of China and Russia simply because they said so? Why would you believe that without any evidence? And even if they did provide us evidence, we know that the satellite companies, which are few and far between, are all controlled by these organizations like BlackRock, okay? So they're not, and Google, they're not releasing any information that has not been authorized to be released that could be considered a threat to national security. None of these satellites that get allowed up into space to take pictures, at least in our country, are going to be allowed to disclose anything without the consent of the US government. So, you know, you have to, this is why you have to prepare. You need to get ready to fend for yourself. Remember what gold is telling you. $27.93. See, I thought we were going to hit 2,800 this video. I'm sure if I talk long enough, which I don't want to because I need my R&R. I'm trying to get back to 100%. I've been struggling, man, but I'm going to take the advice of somebody who sent me a message, and I thank you for the message. They told me, do not exercise when you have COVID because it makes it worse. It can actually make it stick around for a long time. So I thank you very much for that advice. And I do love all my subs. I know yesterday I called some people on some shit in the comment section because, hey, you throw shit at me, I'm going to throw it back, man. That's just how it is. You want to post shit in a public forum? Get ready to take the heat. And so that's what I did. But for the overwhelming majority of my viewers who come back, like the videos, support the channel, I love you guys. I really do. I mean, obviously, I wouldn't do this if it wasn't for you. So I do appreciate you greatly and never let anybody try to convince you otherwise. You know, I do this because I'm trying to figure out what's going on in the world. I'm trying to figure out, I'm just trying to figure life out, you know? That's what this is all about. So, on that philosophical note, I think we're going to leave it at that. Keep on prepping, man. Keep on stacking. Because the shit's hitting the fan. Don't let normalcy Norman. I know, I get it. The normalcy Norman is like zombies, you know? They're just clawing at you. And it's so hard to, eventually you're going to tire. Eventually you're going to get tired and you're going to succumb to the zombies. But just don't. Because the zombies don't know what the fuck they're talking about. They never have. That's why a very small amount of people control the world, okay? And only the people who are willing to pair the right amount of research with the right amount of speculation, the right amount of criticality are able to really be ahead of the curve. And that's what I'm trying to help us do. And I'm trying to do it in a way that is just and ethical. And staying true to my beliefs. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment,